Many people have the perception that a conflict exists between science and the Christian faith. They argue that the latest scientific advances make belief in God unreasonable and render the biblical creation accounts unbelievable. But is this the case? Dr. Birdwell, you are a meteorologist and a Christian, and you would agree that Scripture teaches us that God is revealed in the record of nature. As a meteorologist, do you see evidence for God's handiwork in the living realm?
I think I do. I mean, well, first, as you mentioned, Scripture in really dozens of places speaks to creation, but certainly the passages, let's say Psalm 19 and Romans 1, both proclaim that we can see God's character in the creation. And, I think I see that in many places. For example, for the last 500 million years, the climate of the earth has essentially varied by no more than plus or minus 5 degrees Celsius. That is really an incredible thing when you consider all the parameters that have to go into keeping it that way. Things like the oceans, for example, that circulate heat around the world, which make our climate a lot more hospitable. The land cover, the extent of the ice sheets, all of these things have to play into keeping our climate just perfect, basically. And by perfect, I mean, compared to other planets. Plus or minus 5C is a pretty wide range, but it's a lot less than you'd find on any other planet that we know of.
What do you think is the most compelling evidence for a creator, again, as a meteorologist?
Well, I think I'll just focus on three things from the climate side. First of all, that climate I mentioned, that range in climate, that has to be perfectly balanced with the brightening of the sun that has happened over geologic time. It has to be balanced with the introduction of life forms that remove things like carbon from the atmosphere. It has to be balanced with the position of the continents, because those affect the ocean currents. The constituents of the atmosphere are important. There are so many different things. And then a second area I think that's really a design evidence would be the moon collider event that happened early in Earth's history. This basically removed the rather thick atmosphere of the Earth and allowed us to have a thinner atmosphere that's more conducive for advanced life. Otherwise, we would still be like Venus, which has an atmosphere 40 times thicker. But the collision event did many other things. It enhanced the iron in the Earth's interior, and so we ended up with an enhanced magnetic field. There are so many things, but I think one of the really amazing ones is water. Water is the substance that circulates, moves heat around the atmosphere. It moves heat through the oceans, through the currents, and also it's an amazing substance from the standpoint that it's not, many substances are heavier when they're coldest or heavier in their solid form, but ice, for example, is lighter than its liquid counterpart, and therefore it floats on the surface, and that provides us a way that the sun can melt it. If ice was heavier, for example, than the ocean water, it would sink to the bottom of the ocean and freeze and probably result in the eventual icing over of the planet. So water is a very amazing substance, and not only does it do all those things for the climate, but it also is the substance in which life primarily exists. So
We can all be grateful for that.
Right.
Now, a lot of people are aware of these things. Certainly, scientists are aware of the data you just explained, and yet they're resistant to intelligent design. Why do you think this is the case?
I think certainly worldview has a part in that. If a person has a certain worldview, then they don't necessarily always have a disposition to see evidence a certain way. But I think probably even more important in our day and age is just the incredible depth of science. Science, as a modern endeavor, has really been around for 300 or 400 years, and it has grown exponentially. And because of that, it's necessary for people to specialize in very small areas of science. I mean, even in atmospheric science, if we just narrowed it down to that, there are many types of specialists in small areas of atmospheric science. You have to do that in order to advance the field. But one of the disadvantages of that is sometimes you lose sight of the big picture.